This episode is for all you women leaders out there who want to be leading in a way that's authentic with who you truly are. Do you ever get that feeling that you're managing in a way which just really doesn't feel like it's truly who you are? Well, you're in luck because this week I'm talking to Ros Cardinal. Ros Cardinal is a solution and results oriented facilitator. She's got expertise in strategic planning, leadership development, organizational culture, change management, emotional intelligence, and employee engagement. And she has created Women's Leader Archetypes, a great way of understanding how you truly authentically lead as a female leader. Let's get started, shall we? Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Project Joyful podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Tutty, your medical herbalist and high performance coach. So, hey, Project Joyful isn't just about being happy. It's about consciously creating a life you love. It's about remembering how to reconnect with your soul-centered joy. You know, that joy that comes from doing what you love, from living on purpose, and from being in a life that allows you to experience deep joy moment by moment. So, hey, let's get started, shall we? Well, hello and welcome to Project Joyful. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Ros Cardinal. Ros Cardinal is a solution and results orientated facilitator with expertise spanning strategic planning, leadership development, organizational culture, change management, emotional intelligence, and employee engagement. She's the creator of the Women's Leadership Archetypes model. Ros is a blogger and the author of The Resilient Employee. In addition, she also contributes regular articles to Leaders in Heels, the Huffington Post, and People Development magazine. Welcome to Project Joyful, Ros.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and thanks for having me.
It's really exciting for what we're going to be talking about today because your work focuses on women's leader archetypes. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you got into this piece of work as well.
It's a long story, so I'm going to take you back a little bit. So I've been working in the human resources field since the late 1980s, so it's been quite a while. As I moved into executive coaching and started working more with, I work with men and women, but my focus a lot has been on women. And I was starting to hear stories from women. I certainly experienced this myself in my own corporate career of getting to a point in the organisation where you sort of look at the roles above you, that sort of glass ceiling, and you look at it and go, I'm not sure I really want what's on the other side of that. So women are saying to me, I don't know that I want to sacrifice, family and, me time to do that, because they're looking at it and going, there's long hours, there's a lot of responsibility, it's very high stress, there's a lot of things involved that I'm not sure I really want to do. And then my daughter started work, and I remember talking to her about her experiences in the workforce in a male-dominated industry. And nothing had changed for her, when I reflect back on my own experience entering the workforce as a young woman and the experiences I had, nothing had really changed in a generation. And I sort of started to think about, why is this? Why is it that we're not getting it right for women in organisations? And that led me into a kind of a germ of an idea where I started reaching out on LinkedIn to women in my network and just saying, hey, look, I'd like to have a chat about women's leadership. And it kind of went viral, and I'm not really sure how, but I ended up with 538 women from around the world who wanted to talk about leadership. And I worked with them for, a couple of years talking about, did focus groups, I did interviews, I got them to do surveys, and I gathered this really rich I suppose database isn't really the right word, because it's more about stories. The stories about women in leadership, in organisations, in their own businesses. And what really came out of that is that successful female leadership is quite different. So when I talk to women who own their own businesses, the way they'd structured the business and the way they operated in terms of the hours of work and the expectations was quite different, because it was that sense of we need to make room for the whole human. We need to have room for our families and our responsibilities outside of work and our hobbies and our me time and all of those other things. And work is just part of that. It's not everything.
Interesting.
And yes, and so that sort of really sparked this idea of developing a model around it, and the reason I refer to them as archetypes is archetypes are simply a pattern of behaviour that you recognise and you go, I know what that is. So when we call somebody a drama queen, you know what that is. You don't need to say what's a drama queen. Everyone knows what that looks like. Or you say that person's such a princess. And so archetypes are patterns of behaviour. And what we identified out of it is that there's essentially 8 patterns of behaviour that women use successfully and unsuccessfully in leadership. There's 4 empowered archetypes and there's 4 corresponding shadow archetypes. And then I developed an assessment tool around that and put that out into the world. And early last year, I think it was, I checked the database and we had over 10,000 entries, so over 10,000 women who'd taken the assessment and represented, I think, 93 countries, which is huge. So data from all around the world, from women in all stages of their business and career lives. And it really, it sort of goes back to that honouring those initial women who told me their stories about their lives and about their business journeys. And one of the examples I had was a woman who owns a speech pathology practice, and she said, we don't deliberately employ only men. It just seems to be, only women. It just seems to us that when men apply for the jobs, they just opt out for some reason. But what she told me was, she said that the business was very organic. It was very, there's quite a lack of hierarchical structure. She said, I feel like, as a business owner, I feel like one of the team. We all work together collaboratively. All of the women were part-time and had children. So she said, if somebody's kid's sick, everyone else kind of sits down at the beginning of the day and goes, okay, let's have a look at the patient load they've got. And how do we split up all their patients amongst the rest of us so that all the patients get seen for the day and there's no stress involved. Everybody's happy. But then there's not that sense of, you owe me one because I did that work for you. It's very much it's just what we do. We look after the clients, we look after the community, we look after each other. And so it's really beautiful. And then it kind of took me into where did all of this come from? And the journey sort of took me back to the Industrial Revolution, when prior to that we lived and worked in quite small communities. We'd work together in a village or in a tribe or in a community of some sort, or with our families. And then all the men went somewhere else to go to work and women weren't there. So the world of work has been designed in a way that works for men but doesn't work for women. So that's sort of quite hierarchical structure, that's strength-based, one person at the top, quite a competitive environment, is something that, men designed, and we weren't there in the conversation, which is no one's fault. It's just how it worked out. And women came into the picture in World War II and then exited again. And then we came back again in kind of the generation before me was like my mum worked. But I remember being a kid at school and I was one of the only kids whose mum worked. Everybody else's mum stayed at home.
Right.
So we do have this sense that women in the workplace in large numbers is quite new. It's quite a recent phenomenon. And we really are finding that it's not working for women. There are some women who make it work for them, but there's always sacrifice involved. I spoke to a woman who said that she'd had a very successful career in Asia, and she's retired back to Australia now. But she said, I had what's called an auntie in the country that she lived in, which was a live-in, I suppose you'd call her housekeeper.
Right.
And she said, my auntie did everything for me. She cooked, she shopped, she cleaned, she ironed my clothes, she did everything. And that's what enabled me to have that successful career, is having that support mechanism.
Right.
Which is a luxury that, unless you're on a very, very high income, it's not something that the average woman can afford. We can't all afford living nannies and housekeepers to support us. So
and it's really interesting in terms of like successful career people. There's always that support around them. It's never something that's done alone. And traditionally it's the woman who's supporting the man in the endeavour to build that career, isn't it?
And look, to be honest, I don't think the system works for anybody. I mean, it's getting more pressured. Organisations keep saying we need to do more with less, and what that means is we need fewer people, and the people we've got left need to do more. And so even senior men at the top are sort of living that life where they don't see their families.
Yeah.
There's a sacrifice involved. It's like I work crazy hours, but my wife does all the things behind the scenes. So it's not something that enables humans to flourish, but we seem to have created this monster that we can't unwind. It really is that drive, that, very, very, that hustle culture.
Yeah.
Drive, get stuff done. And it's not healthy for humans in general, but in particular, like I said, women don't thrive in it. So that was where the work kind of started. And like I said, we've got over 10,000 women in the database now, but the stories I heard were just amazing. And I've coached women using this model who have had, quite incredible outcomes, because they've let go of trying to lead in the way that the system tries to make them lead.
Yeah.
And gone, let's just lead in this sort of really, truly authentic female leadership style that really works.
I love that, because a lot of what we do through Revitalise is about reconnecting with those things that bring you joy and how you want to choose to feel on a daily basis. And a lot of female leaders are coming to me because they're saying, I had this dream, I wanted to do this thing, I'm doing this thing, and I'm falling out of love with it. Yep. And I don't know why. So like cognitively it satisfies me, but I'm missing out on all the other things. And it sounds like the women's leader archetypes is addressing a similar concern. So tell me more about these archetypes.
So the model itself is like a diamond shape.
Right.
And what you said about joy, it fits in so beautifully, because the sovereign archetype, who sits at the head of it all, is about joy. It's self-actualizing, doing the things that make you happy, making good choices about life. A self-actualized woman is living her best life on her own terms.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful space to be in, because it's making those choices about, I will climb the corporate ladder if that's what brings me joy, but I'll also exit and go and work for a not-for-profit, or I'll go and become a volunteer, or I'll start my own business, because it's making choices that are right for me, not being stuck in them because I feel like I should. And that's where you get the woman who, and I had somebody like this who'd been an accountant for 3 decades or something, and quit work in her late 40s, just resigned from her job and went to become a doctor. So she did 7 years of medical training and all the interning, and just to become a doctor. And she finally graduated in her sort of, probably would have been early mid 50s. But she just went, you know what, I'm sick and tired of doing the shoulds, what I should do, and I'm going to do what I really want to do. And that is that sense of like the sovereign, that real joy that comes with it. And then the next layer down, there's 3 archetypes, which essentially are around human motivation. So the warrior archetype is motivated by achievement. So she loves to get things done. She's our goal setter. She's our go-to place when we need to achieve anything. Big vision, problem solving, loves a good challenge, brings people together to really get the job done. But the key focus there is the joy of achieving. And it's not because I'm proving myself to anybody. I'm just doing it because it's fun and I love it, and it makes me feel fulfilled. And then we have our wise woman archetype. Sorry, go on.
It's coming from a space of wholeness rather than the sort of to prove, which is whole, fight or flight, isn't it? It puts the sympathetic nervous system to the floor because you're always worried about being found out.
Yeah, and that's the shadow archetype layer, which I'll go into in a moment. And then we've got the wise woman archetype, which is that motivated by the need for influence. And when women use power, we generally tend to use it as power for the good of the collective. So it doesn't tend to be a very individual, although it can be in the shadow archetype side of it. But that, I use my power for good, I influence effectively. A wise woman is sought out for her wisdom and knowledge. She's a lifelong learner. She grows, she learns, she passes that knowledge on. So she's mentoring, supporting, growing, watching other people achieve through the advice that she gives them. So it's this really lovely nurturing type, but it's also very strong and influential and powerful. And then we have the we have the sorry, I'm having a complete mental blank on my own archetype system here. We have the tribe builder. We have I'd slipped into the shadow archetype, and I was like, which one? It's not. It's the tribe builder, and the tribe builder is the motivation there is people, affiliation, and liking the need to spend time with people. And so it's this beautiful sense of tribe builders gather people around them. They create communities, they create collectives, they create networking. They are always connecting people. It's like, I know someone you should talk to, and they'll make it happen. They bring people together for events, and they're the ones who love a good party, but they throw the most amazing parties where people love, it's just they love people.
Yeah.
But it's ego. It's very connected. It's very much from that sort of, the ventral vagus place of being very, safe and connected. So it's a beautiful space. And then you've got the 4 shadow archetypes that pop up when we're not feeling at our best. And that's when we are operating in that fight, flight, freeze or fawn space. So the 4 different types actually correlate with the archetypes. So on the... over on the side with the warrior, we've got the tyrant. And what happens in the tyrant archetype is we've moved into that flight response, which is this need. It's very, hyper-energized. I need to do things. I need to prove myself, do more work, do more. It's this very driven space.
Do more in order to be more.
Yep. Perfectionism lives there. Imposter syndrome lives there. This constant drive for more, do more. And it's about proving myself by being competent. So the more competent I feel and the more I deliver, the better I feel about myself. And when I feel like I'm not safe unless I'm over-delivering.
Sounds like there might be a bit of control at play in there as well.
Yeah, that slips into lone wolf. So lone wolf is the need for control. So she's the shadow of the wise woman, which is where we take that need for influence, and it becomes about power and control. I need to control everything. I need to micromanage. I need to withhold things so that nobody else knows what I know. Because if you don't know what I know, you can't replace me. So I feel safe in being the only expert in something.
Not great for business continuity.
Not at all. And that's that fight response, it's the fight response in the threat, which is this, I've got to control everything. And look, I had somebody in that space who told me with, completely straight face, she didn't think this was a problem. She took a laptop to a wedding that she went to and logged in during the wedding ceremony to do something that had to be done to a particular deadline.
Oh my.
And she said, it was fine. I was sitting up the back. No one noticed. It's like, that's completely not the point. You know, you've logged in during a
Yeah.
wedding, of one of your friends' weddings, and you're sitting up the back on your laptop doing work.
Let's spend a moment getting clear about what really matters.
Yeah, yeah. And that was about, you know, she wasn't delegating. And so nobody in her team could do the thing she needed to do because she refused to teach anyone else how to do it, because it was her sense of control, is that I'm the only person who can do this task. And so therefore you can't replace me.
A recipe for burnout.
Yeah, totally. And then over on the tribe builder side, we've got the martyr, which is that sense of people pleasing. It's when I slip from that lovely people are wonderful into I need everyone to like me. And what do I say? What do I do? What decisions do I make to make sure you're always going to like me? And so they end up feeling frustrated. They feel like a victim. Everyone takes advantage of me. They've got terrible boundaries in their life because it's all about being such a good person. Because ultimately, again, that attachment is to being good. People approve of me. They think I'm a good person. They think I'm a nice person. And that's the fawn response in our trauma responses. And then right down the bottom of the diamond, we have our hermit, which is, you know, the freeze response, which is where we go when things are really not going well. Yeah. And that's that procrastination, avoiding people, you know, diving under the doona and refusing to come out. You know, I call it having a doona day, but yeah. Won't come out, won't deal with things. And you know when you're doing it, it's not helping. It's like, I know if I'm procrastinating on this task, it's going to get worse if I don't do it. If I don't have this conversation with this person, the issue's going to get worse and the conflict will get worse. But the hermit is this space of, I'm in my hermit cave and therefore I feel safe. So that's the model in a nutshell.
Interesting. And so when people get to the point where they're like, something isn't working here and I need to make a change, what are the questions that are front and center in their mind that result in them seeking you out?
Look, it often is about exiting from corporate. So I will get women who come to me and say, like I said, I've looked beyond the glass ceiling. I don't want that world. I don't want to do it. Or they're already in it and this is burning me out, or I'm, you know, in a space where I'm just not coping with it particularly well. So they come along for some sort of support to rethink what they're doing with the idea of an exit plan. Now, it doesn't always end up in an exit plan. A lot of the women that I coach fall back in love with their job. You know, I had a woman who came to me and she said she was operating in the martyr archetype, so she'd become an executive. Very smart, very capable, but on the executive team there was a trigger point for her where a new CEO came in and he brought some of his old team with him to his new role, as often happens. And she said it was like a boys' club. They were very tight, they spent a lot of time together, and it was very much, she said, there's an A team and a B team, and I'm firmly on the B team. And the longer she spent there, the more she slipped into martyr. So she was doing things like, you know, if somebody showed up to an executive meeting and had forgotten the board papers, she'd run off and photocopy hers for them.
Right.
And if they're running over time and it was going past lunchtime, she'd volunteer to take lunch orders around the table and run over the road to the coffee shop across the road and buy all the sandwiches. You know, she was just dropped right into that over-sacrificing of herself to try and please people and make an impression by being a good, nice, reliable type of person. And she said to me, I want out. And as we worked through developing more of it, you know, the first place to go to is always the sovereign archetype. Like, how do we bring people back to this space of feeling safe, developing self-esteem, developing self-confidence, finding joy in life? And the more we worked on that, I found the less she wanted to talk about her exit plan, which was, you know, predictable but interesting. So to start with, it's all, I need out. And as we worked on, it's like, okay, let's support you to, you know, support you back into that sense of self-esteem so that you can start looking for another job, not from a space of running away, but from a space of being really empowered and making good strategic choices. Yeah. And she fell back in love with her job, and she said that to me in the end. She said, I've decided not to leave. And she'd gone from, in 6 months, from being this dog's body to the executive to being almost like the right hand of the CEO. He was, you know, calling on her for advice. You know, whenever he needed something, he'd go to her to talk things through. So she'd really completely shifted the dynamic of how people saw her.
That's so interesting, isn't it? So that change within the self, where we come from that shadow self through to that sovereign, where we're embracing our power and embracing our authenticity and being the female leader that the organization is craving from us. It's interesting that the people around then sort of modify their behavior in response to how she or I or you are being in that moment. I'd love to know more about that.
And look, it's happens all the time, because it is this sense of, like with her, the boundary setting, which is, don't be the first one to jump up and offer to take the lunch orders. If someone says, can you go and photocopy something, just have a quiet word afterwards and say, I'm not sure why you asked me to do that. I wasn't sitting closest to the door. Is this something to do with the fact that I'm a woman? And raising those conversations and actually starting to have them openly. And things like, I had another client who was a the first woman ever to be appointed to her senior role. It was a really big deal because very male-dominated environment, very first woman into that role ever. And she said, I'm at the executive table, and she said, I'll put forward an idea and it will kind of be ignored, and then someone else, a male, will pick up on the idea and say something, and everyone gives him credit for it and tells him what an amazing idea it was. And she said, the more this happens to me, the more I feel devalued and disempowered. I feel like nobody values me and nobody listens to me. And that was a matter of, as well as building the sovereign, giving her some scripts to use. So things like, Jim, isn't it wonderful that we're on the same page with that idea? I'm so glad you're building on what I said. Nice. Let's get together and flesh this out more, and we can bring it back to the executive with a solution. Love and it. So making it really clear, but in a way that's very elegant, that doesn't make it sound like she's being, as women get labelled, whiny, bitchy, those kinds of labels that women carry often.
And it's so helpful having those scripts at your fingertips that you've practiced with someone beforehand, so it feels effortless and you're not scrambling for the right thing to say.
Yes, because that often happens. Something like that happens, and a woman will say to me, it happened, and I was just so gobsmacked I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And then the moment's gone past, and I feel like if I bring it up now, it's going to feel like I'm complaining. And it's like, no, just, have that script in the moment where when it happens to you, because she knew it was going to happen again. And her first opportunity to practice happened about 2 days after our coaching session on it. And she said, it was amazing. I said it. And she said, everyone kind of looked at me like they were seeing me for the first time. And then the guy who'd stolen the idea just went, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's have a meeting let's have an offline meeting and we'll talk it through. And then the room kind of just went with it, which was great.
Yeah, I love that. And so for anyone who's listening to our episode today and they're thinking, this might be me, what would you suggest they do as like the first tentative step forward?
You can come to the website. So last year, once we hit that 10,000 women in the database, I did a couple of things. The first one was to give it a home of its own, because previously it had been a little corner of my existing consulting website. So I moved it to a new website. So it's womensleaderarchetypes.com.au is where you'll find it.
Nice.
And on that website, there's information about the archetypes. There's a place where you can book a obligation-free chat if you'd like to, and so on. But one of the key things I'm really leaning into at the moment is accrediting other women to use it in their work.
Brilliant. So
coaches, mentors, facilitators, people and culture professionals, anyone who works with women who wants an assessment tool that's going to really, it's life-changing. That's what women have said to me, that it's absolutely life-changing, just getting hold of this model and understanding how to be truly empowered as a woman without feeling like you need to behave like a man to be successful. So if anyone's out there who's listening who thinks I'd love to add that to my toolkit, then again, pop along to the website and we can have a chat about it, because that's the next phase for me, is getting this out into the world as broadly as possible.
Oh, brilliant. It's such powerful work, and I love this, that this is something that helps women to lead as women. So important. The organisation needs that.
And we've just, early this week, released the multi-rater feedback version of the assessment tool, which I'm very excited about, because self-assessment is wonderful and it's really empowering to do a self-assessment and understand how you feel. But assessment by other people is really the next step in it, which is, how do the people around me see me? Like, what are they seeing in me in terms of archetypal behaviour? So that's brand new, cab off the rank kind of thing. I kicked off a project this week with a client organisation with 15 women in it, which is the start of the building the benchmarking database. That's another important thing that I really emphasised in the research here, is that I'm accredited in, it must be over 25 different psychometrics and diagnostic tools. And in all that time, when I've been working with women leaders, we're comparing them to benchmarks with other leaders who are predominantly men. Because, when you look at people who are leaders, they're predominantly male. So you end up with a database very heavily skewed in the favour of men. So I wanted to create benchmarking, which is showing women how they compare to other women leaders, which I think is really important. The beauty of those 10,000 women, is it gives us a really robust database to say that in comparison with other women, when you scored this, what it means for you is you're maybe in the top 25%, for example.
Yeah.
So that's important too, is the benchmarking against other women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you've got that opportunity to get feedback as well, because we often don't know what we don't know.
Exactly. And look, for 2/3 of us, we show up differently to what we intend. this one of the things that we know about humans is for 1/3 of people, they're really congruent. So what happens on the inside is what happens on the outside. But for 2/3 of people, there's a filtering system happening, which means that we're intending to, like, just say, for example, we're intending to show up as a tribe builder. So we're intending to show up and be really engaged and connecting and spend time with our team and sort of nurture the relationships. And other people may not see that. They may see us as being quite, warrior driven, which is all about the goals and the task. And what that is a disconnect where we're spending time with people, but we're talking about the wrong things. Not necessarily the wrong things, but we're talking all about work. We're not talking about how are you as a person, how was your weekend, how are your kids going. It's all, so we might be spending a lot of time with people, but we're not having the right conversation.
So we're not having that deep connection, more sort of a superficial get the work done.
Yeah,
Interesting. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with you other than the website, how else would you recommend people reach out to you and learn more about your work?
I'm on not all socials. I'm staying off TikTok. But you can find me on Twitter, which is now X, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best place. I've got 2 Facebook pages for business. One's Ros Cardinal, which is my archetypes work. The other one is Shaping Change, which is my business. And look, you can reach out to me through my website. There's details on there to get in touch, phone numbers, emails, etc. Or you can just get in touch. It's Ros, R-O-S, at shapingchange.com.au.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks so much for your time today, Ros. It's been fascinating talking about these archetypes, and it's really making me think about the things that I see when I'm coaching clients as well. So really, really insightful. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Bye for now.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask you a favour? If our conversation spoke to you today, could you please take a moment to leave a 5-star review? Your review will help people discover this podcast, and together we can create a world where there's even more love and more laughter. And if you want to hear more from the Project Joyful podcast, just click the subscribe button. Bye for now.